This is Open Book, the podcast where Christian students share about a chapter of their lives. Because being Christian is hard enough on its own, but it's even harder when no one talks about it. May these stories resonate with you and your walk with God. Hi everyone, welcome to Open Book, the podcast where Christian students give us a peek into a chapter of their lives. Today I am joined with
Jen
and Jordan.
Yeah, these are some of my friends. We go to Axe Collective College Church. Yeah. Stop! I know the church I go to. Do you guys want to do a little intro about who you are and what you're doing here?
My name is Jen. I am a cognitive science major and I am a senior now.
I'm Jordan. I am a new grad. I'm old. Graduated with business economics. I like to play drums.
Wow.
I forgot to say my fun fact.
It's okay.
I was like, oh.
Jen, what do you do?
I play violin.
Wow. I'm surrounded by musicians.
What do you play?
Video games. I don't. Actually, I used to play clarinet.
Oh.
I was like second. In a moment of like spite, I became a. Jordan, give me a look.
Like spite towards.
I got kicked out of choir because I couldn't sing, and so then they put me in a band, and they were like, "You should do clarinet because it'll help you with whatever." And then I was like, "Fine, I'll do clarinet," and I got really good at it. Then I left, and that's like my legacy. Anyways, I wanted to do a little intro stuff. So my question for you guys to get us started before we get into it is, what is the best TV show and or snack from your childhood, if you can remember?
I guess, I don't know. I guess for me, TV show, the only thing that comes to mind is Little Einsteins.
The what?
Little
Einsteins. I thought you said the Einsteins. I was like, who?
No, the Little Einsteins.
Little Einsteins. Why?
I like the music. I was also really jealous of Quincy for some gosh reason. I did not like that he knew all the instruments. I was like, I want that. I want to know all the instruments. So that's all I remember.
So funny. Was that on PBS?
Was it? I
don't
remember.
I don't know. I could be lying right now.
I have no idea.
Yeah. What about for you, Jordan?
It was SpongeBob.
No!
Yeah. My humor is really broken, so I'm not very hard to make laugh. Literally, the three shows that came to mind were SpongeBob, Adventure Time, and Regular Show, which all have very broken humor. So
I've never watched any of those actually.
Yeah, it's okay. You didn't miss out on much.
Do you know about the bacon pancakes thing? Bacon pancakes,
bacon pancakes. And that's all I remember. But yeah, it keeps going.
Wow, that is so wonderful. Yeah. I don't know why that's so funny that you were a SpongeBob kid.
Yeah, a lot of my friends weren't allowed to watch SpongeBob as kids.
Yeah.
That's a common thing I see now. And everyone I talk to, I'm like, I watched SpongeBob. They're like, I wasn't allowed to watch that. And I was like,
really?
That's the thing I hear more often than I kind of expected to.
I think my parents would have said that it wasn't allowed, but they didn't know what it was. So
stop. No, because I was one of the I'm not allowed to kids. But then everyone else I talked to was like, what do you mean you didn't watch SpongeBob? I love SpongeBob.
No, I'm in the minority now. I used to everyone used to watch SpongeBob.
So weird.
And then when I came to college, no one else watched it, so I just look crazy.
I think people are lying. To sound better. Did you ever get a reason for why they weren't allowed to watch SpongeBob?
They said their parents said it would make their brain rot or something.
Brain rot.
Do you think that's true?
No comment.
Actually, well, yeah. Speaking of brains.
Nice segue.
Thank you. The reason that I have Jen and Jordan here today isn't just to talk about cartoons and brain rot. They actually wanted to kind of talk about, so both of them are Christians, and I kind of want to talk about how Christians can struggle with mental health stuff, but also continue being Christian, how was that in their lives, and maybe how that would apply in your life. I know for me, it's been a really big kind of topic, and I think it'll be really good to hear from them. So I think to get us started, I wanted to ask, kind of like what's your history with mental health, and then how did that tie in with either you becoming Christian or just you as a Christian now? Either one of you can start off.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, as a kid, I grew up in a Christian household. So everyone around me was Christian. I went to a Christian elementary school. I was always surrounded by Christian people. However, like I struggled a lot with isolation because I just thought that spending time with people was not worth it. Like they were just always going to disappoint me. So I may as well just spend time with myself or working on myself, doing things that I want and things like that. Yeah, that didn't end out well. High school is when I realized like, oh, wow, I really have closed myself off to people for so long. I felt so lonely. And I didn't realize that how much of a struggle it would be just being by myself. And I escaped a lot into like different things, media, like games, just the internet in general. And I really dove into that in order to find like my self-worth in other people's praise. But then, yeah, I guess, I was really depressed during that time. I did not want to go out. I not want to talk to people. But it was during COVID that I actually went back to church after taking a break for a while. And I decided that, hey, I'm just going to try it out again because nothing's working out right now. So I went back. They did a talk about idols. I was like, that hit. Oh, my idols in my life. Maybe it's myself. And so, I just kept going to church. I met some other good Christian people, and I really grew my faith with them. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay. Thank you, Jen. And Jordan?
So for me, I mean, I didn't grow up going to church. Kind of. It was like semi-church. I went once a week and stuff like that. I guess I was always pretty anxious growing up, but if you asked me growing up if I like considered myself anxious, I'm like, no. Like anxiety actually didn't really become much of a problem, like or something I took note of until after becoming Christian, which was kind of, I guess, strange to think about. But like growing up, it was more so like, I kind of similar to Jen would like seek people's praise and like worry and like overthink about like almost everything. But then I'd also like try to distract myself from it as best I could. I did not like think about the future, whether that was like, where am I going to go for college? Where am I going to be like down the line? Like all these people have like 5-10 year plans. I never wanted to think about that. But it wasn't until after like deciding to become Christian in college that like anxiety started to kind of become more and more prevalent. And there's different reasons for that. Like a lot of doubt I kind of started experiencing, and kind of like different thoughts I would have that would just take over, and I would hone in on that. But yeah.
That's so interesting, because I was going to ask, I think there's like this, at least from what I hear, like this common theme of like, I was depressed, I became Christian, and now I'm so perfect and everything's awesome. But you guys have kind of different-ish stories. Like Jen, I wanted to ask, like, do you feel that was maybe true, like after becoming Christian? Because you said you kind of struggled with depression, like somewhere there, and then you became Christian and you started hanging out with people. Do you think that was like that kind of moment for you?
Not exactly. It took a lot of time. I think even though like I was depressed throughout high school, it still seeped into college. Like even as I started hanging out with people,
even after you became Christian.
Yeah, and I mean I was always Christian, but then like that was high school was the moment I had turned back. Okay. But then even during college, I struggled a lot. Like I still had a lot of thoughts about like basically sad thoughts and self-deprecating thoughts about myself, and I just really struggled a lot on how I dealt with those thoughts, even as a Christian, because it feels wrong. It feels like you shouldn't have those thoughts as a Christian, right? You're like, oh, I have God, right? I'm fine. But then you still have those thoughts and you're like, oh, should I really be having these thoughts? Am I even Christian for that, right? And I think that, you are still Christian for that. We all have our moments of doubt. But, yeah.
See, okay, you bring up that point, which is what I kind of wanted to switch to Jordan, because you said your anxiety stuff, or like the kind of like a lot of it didn't come till after being Christian. And so then like, how do you wrestle with that idea that Jen was talking about of like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or like, and it happened more so after you became Christian versus like before?
Yeah, no, that's something I've thought about a lot. And like, I remember, because like, you know, like we see different testimonies and things like that. And like some are about like mental health, and it's kind of that progression you talked about. It's like, oh, I became Christian and then like got better. And then I'm like, why is mine the other way around? Like, why did I like get worse? Like what happened?
Oh, yeah.
But like, I don't think it's that black and white. Like, I think I was always there. I just didn't realize it.
What do you mean by that?
Like in terms of like the type of thoughts I would have. Like, so I guess to peer into it a little bit more, like when I became Christian, like this is kind of its own topic, but like doubt and like like trying to understand like my faith, like that would actually cause me to be like really anxious, because like I couldn't like be certain about all the questions I was asking, and like make me really anxious the fact that I couldn't be certain or completely in control.
Yeah, what kind of questions were you asking at that time?
Like, okay, I mean, I wanted like airtight proof of God, and, like, like questioning like why God did certain things, or like I guess trying to understand like, okay, now like, I'm Christian, but like what about like people who I know who aren't? And then like I would like become burdened, but then didn't know what to do with that, so then it turned into like misunderstanding and then like anxiety. But yeah, so like that would happen a lot more, and so I kind of had to wrestle with like similar thoughts that like Jen was talking about, like, man, like, am I even Christian? Like, am I supposed to be feeling like this? And I would kind of have like I think even more recently, like more self-deprecating thoughts where it's like, oh, like I'm doing something wrong. I'm the only one who struggles with something like this. Like I'm not getting better. I'm getting worse. And it kind of like unravels like a lot more. But yeah, like I think being able to talk to people about it a lot more is what has helped, because the longer I stay in my own head, the worse it gets. And so I think there's been a lot of, you know, like practical practices that like, you know, different mentors in our church that have kind of like helped me like kind of try to implement. And I say try because I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Wow.
It's hard.
That's so interesting. So then was there a moment for either of you where you were like, oh my gosh, like I have to deal with this? You said that you talked to mentors. Jen, was there like a time where you were like, as someone trying to like rededicate her life, is that like, would you say that that's where like you were rededicating? Like, how did you start to like, I don't know, did you bring it up to people? Did you journal? Like, what was kind of that process for you?
I talked to people, but then a lot of journaling for sure. Like really like seeing my thoughts out on paper was totally different than thinking them in my head, right? Because sometimes when you say things out loud or write it on paper, you read it again, you're like, that doesn't sound right, you know? And then I think that helped me a lot. And then also talking out loud for sure. Like when you talk to someone, I don't know, for me, I always feel like, there's no point in talking to them. They can't fix what I'm going through, right? But then there's a lot of benefit in like speaking it out loud, and you'll realize your thoughts are not as sound as they seem.
Yeah, I think going off of that too, it's like they're not as sound as you think, and they're also very repetitive. So I think something that like I realized, I remember I was talking to one of the mentors, and then they were like, okay, like run me through your thoughts. And I start talking, like give it 2 minutes, and I start repeating it. And then it's like, oh, like I'm actually thinking the same thing for like, I could think about something the whole day, and it's actually the same thing. I just don't realize it. But then the moment you put it on paper, say it out loud to someone else, like then you kind of realize the like absurdity of it.
Yeah. No, that's so real. For context, I also like have a tendency to like struggle in that area. And so I think like, yeah, just the idea that saying it out loud is it's so much different than when you say it in your head. Like I think like the 2 times I've done it with like one of our friends, like in the car, like she'll be driving and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going crazy, and and she's like when someone else hears it, they're able to like kind of break it down really well. So I really appreciate you guys bringing that up. Was there any like, do you have any like specific stories like of a time when that happened and then you were like, if I keep doing this, it might like, it doesn't go away, but like you're like, oh, it's not as logical as it was like in here?
Yeah, I guess for me it was kind of that time I brought up, because my mentor, he was like, okay, like talk it through, like what's kind of on your mind. And like again, a lot of like the source of my anxiety is kind of like, doubt in God or like doubt in myself as a Christian. And then it's like, okay, like I don't feel like I'm a Christian. And then it kind of like spirals out. And he's like, okay, like what's your next thought? And I'll be like, oh, because I'm doing this, or I'm acting like this. And then like literally not even a minute and a half later, like I repeated one of the things. And he was like, yeah, like you have like 2 minutes worth of thoughts, but it's taking up 12 hours of your day. And I was like, oh shoot. Like, and I think that was kind of like a reality check. Like, there are things I kind of get so worked up about, and it's, in all honesty, like it's more so about myself. It's very like me centric, like these anxious thoughts I have. But then my thought process is like, I need to figure this out before I do anything else. And like, there's this analogy he gave me. It's like, if this was like a pie, I guess, it's like I'm fixated on like a very small portion of it, and like I'm like this is so important, when in reality, like reality encompasses everything else. And it's like, but to me, like that reality is like a very small slice.
Wait, I like that. It kind of reminds me, is that based off of that Rats? One of the pastors talks about like, oh, it's true, but not true enough. Like there's like a bigger picture. I don't know if you've heard that before. Like this is the sliver, and like this is true. It's just not true enough.
In some sense, I think it's a little different. But
yeah,
yeah.
Cool. For you, Jen, was there any like? It's okay if there wasn't, because I think everyone's
I thought of one
different.
thing.
Okay.
Similar. I was talking to a mentor. There was someone who told me like, "You're not Christian because of blah 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 blah." I got told this, and I was like, "What?" Because I was struggling with it at the time, and I went to my mentor. I was like, "Am I really Christian? I can't. Like, what if I'm not?" And she was like, "Okay, take your time. Think about this. What makes you not Christian? Or like, what does it mean to be Christian?" And I was like, well, to believe that Jesus Christ died and rose again, and that he came to save us from sin. And she's like, did he do that for you? Do you believe that? I was like, yes. And she was like, okay, then you're Christian. I was like, oh, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. So I think, yeah, that helped me. Like, it really does help to talk to mentors, because then you'll go through these spirals and then you'll be like, what is happening? But then having someone else talk you through it and go through back to the basics. That helps a lot.
Oh, I like that. I think both of you kind of brought up like, like these moments where you're kind of like spiraling out and it helps to talk with someone. But I wonder, like, let's just say like after a talk, you're still kind of like thinking about it. Like you feel a little more settled, but it's still like on your mind. Does that ever kind of leak into how you view God, or how you began to view God? Because I know for me, like in my own like personal life, like I really, even now, like I'm like, Lord, like why is this like the thorn that you put in my side? Like, are you using it for good? Is it all gonna mean something, or is it just this like pain and like suffering and like whatever that I'm dealing with just gonna be for forever, for nothing? Like, was that ever something, maybe not that exactly, but was there a way that it shifted or like impacted your view of God?
Yeah, it's actually pretty similar to what you just said. No, it's like I've had that thought, like man, like why am I struggling with this? Like I don't see any benefit of someone having to struggle with this. And like, it's like kind of like goes into like self-pity mode a little bit, and entertaining that. But I think, yeah, I'd kind of like come to God and be like, why? Like what is the purpose of this? Like why is this the thing I struggle with? And I think part of it is like, yeah, because it sucks to feel that like a lot of the time, because then it's hard to be present with other people and whatnot. But then it's also like, man, I feel like I'm not even able to love on the people in my life. And it feels like I'm doing myself a disservice and other people a disservice. And I'm like, I don't want to keep struggling with this. Like, this is not beneficial to me or to other people. And then so it's like, God, like, I don't really see any good to this, if anything. Like, and so it kind of like really shifted that for me. And it's something like, it's not like I wrestled with it once and then it went away. Like, I think that's an up and down type, like battle. But it is like, I mean, kind of what you said, like that thorn in your side. Like, I remember my one of my peers, he like gave me that verse, like 2 Corinthians 12:9 specifically, but then like before that, where Paul's talking about like this thorn he has on his side, and he asks God to remove it like 3 times, and God's response is like, "My grace is sufficient for you. Like my power is made perfect in weakness." And I remember like when I heard it, like I was kind of just like, so I might have to struggle with this for like the rest of my life. I was like, that sounds torturous. Like it didn't actually soothe me at first. Like, but I think the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, like I don't have to define myself by this. Like I'm seeking for some sort of like silver bullet fix, and that's not really out there to like just heal my anxiety right away. But like there's this other thing, like God's grace, and that is enough. Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. How did that, because you talked about the transition of going from this is really frustrating, which is what I feel like often when I read that verse, and then kind of like it's now comforting. Like, was it the repetition of it? Was it like what kind of brought you from one state of mind to like the other regarding that?
I think a big part was repetition, because like the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, that sounds torture to kind of have to like, you know, keep feeling this. But then the more I kind of like thought about it, or the more I repeated that verse to myself, I think the more it began to spoke to me. Like it's kind of like silly, but it's like a fun fact: I work at Chick-fil-A. So does April.
Exposed.
That's crazy.
Exposed.
Sorry, but like even like during my shifts, like I get really anxious and like in my own head. And then like there was like a solid few weeks where like all I did was like, for my grace is sufficient, for my grace is sufficient, for my grace is sufficient. It's like that is what I would like try to replace my thoughts with. And like sometimes was like going through the motions of it, like definitely. But then at other points, like it really did like calm me down, where it's like, okay, like that is all I need. I don't need this like silver bullet fix that I'm looking for. I don't need to hit this idealized self I'm trying to be so badly. Like I don't need to have all the answers about God that I want right away. Like this grace that I have, that means eternity. Like that's enough. It's like hard, like in a day-to-day basis, but the fact that I even have that hope is like greater than any other thing I could try to like grasp, but can't. Yeah.
That was so good.
That
was so good. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's actually funny. Yesterday, I was on dining room for 3 hours and I wanted to cry. But then similarly, like I had a verse and I like memorized it, and I think like like the repetition of truth is really helpful, because it's not the same as like talking to someone, but kind of knowing like this is what is objectively true, that his grace is sufficient for us and his power is made, was it perfect in weakness? Yeah. Aistin, I want to hear more about how that impacted your view, like back to the first question.
I mean, definitely. When I was in it, I was like, why is God letting this happen? Like, how could he let this happen? It makes no sense. But I think, actually, I've been going through health issues as well. And there's a book that one of the mentors recommended to me, A Place of Healing. Super good. It's basically about this person who is a, what is it called? Quadriplegic.
Quadriplegic. Yeah.
Yes, quadriplegic. Has lost her use of all her limbs in a diving accident. And then she also goes through a lot of chronic pain. And so she goes through a lot of these questions that she's struggling through, like, why is God letting this happen? Like, this can also apply to mental health too. Like, why is God letting me experience this suffering that I have to go through daily? And I think one of the things she said that hit me was like, you don't know what God has in plan. Like, if you look at the scale of the universe and you look at how like minuscule we really are, it's kind of scary to think about, but also it really puts you into perspective of like, wow, I don't know what's going on, but God does. And he's the creator of the universe. He's created everything. Why would I not trust him? Because he created everything. He knows how everything works. I don't have to know how everything works, but he does. And so I should put my trust in him no matter what happens. And and I think of the verse Romans. I think it's 8:18. What was it? For I know the sufferings it's been a while. For I know the sufferings of the present will not compare to what has yet to come. And I think that really applies.
Oh, that is so good. No, it makes me, I don't know, I I think more recently, actually, I think I have them right here. I've been really trying to rely on like Bible verses because one of my mentors was like, sister, like you need something that is true to like be poured into. I guess that is a good way to transition to the next kind of question. I was wondering if, because you mentioned Romans, you said 8:18.
I think it is.
Second Corinthians,
yeah.
banger. Are there any other, I mean, if you don't have them on hand, it's okay. Any other like verses that kind of help you through or like specific? Feel free to look them up.
Mama, look at my phone.
Jordan, if you have any off the top of your head.
their verses.
There's two that kind of come to my head. Well, it's like a section, but Philippians 4. It's like verses 4-9. There's a whole lot in there. I'm not going to say it all, but it's like do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. The peace of God which surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And like I remember like the first time I read that, like I read peace of God and I was like, dude, peace is a crazy concept. Like, and I don't know why I started thinking about it, and like it kind of hit me. And this is before I kind of like wrestle with anxiety more, but it's been a verse I really hold on to because it's like bring everything up in like prayer and petition and like supplication. And like there's another verse that I kind of think of. It's Psalm 55:22. It's like, cast your burden on the Lord and he'll sustain you. He'll never permit the righteous to be moved. And like both these verses kind of talking about like lifting that up to God. Because I think the reason I hold on to those verses is because, man, like when I kind of like have the same like, thought again, or like still kind of in this like loop or like cyclical thinking, I'm like, man, I still struggle with it. I don't, my instinct isn't to bring that to God. My instinct is to like wrestle with that, come to understanding of by myself.
Yeah.
Before I like come to God, or it's like, like God can't really like help me with this one, which is like, completely wrong. But it's like, that's kind of the way I start thinking.
Yeah.
Like this one's a little too big for God. And then the rest of Philippians, it's like, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, but it's like, finally, brothers, whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable. And then it goes like, if there's any excellence, anything worthy of praise, think about these things. It's like that last part, like think about these things. I think the reason I hold on to that is like kind of what you're saying. Like you gotta just like memorize verses, like replace it with truth.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just gonna be your own thoughts, and it's like you choose what to think about. And I remember someone telling me like, like this kind of like, you have like, will, you have choice here. And I got like super defensive. I was like, you're telling me like I want like to think about these things? Like I don't. But then it's like, no, I actually have like some control over what I dwell on. But yeah, those are the verses that kind of come to mind.
Thanks for sharing.
So a couple verses that I've been keeping in mind. One of them is James 1:12. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. I think just in general, being steadfast under trial is hard. Like you really are, when you're going through it, you don't want to like love others. You don't want to like do anything. You just want to lay in bed and not do anything. And I think what it means to remain steadfast is really to remain in God's word, like you were saying, and be able to trust God that he's got you, that he, no matter what, he will be there with you. And just really delving into the truth of the word really helps to combat your thoughts. You know the thing I was talking about? The method about writing your thoughts?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So there's this method I still use now. It's like I will write down a thought I have, and then I will think about it, reflect on it, pray about it, and then be like, is this a true thought that aligns with the Bible? And I'll try to look up verses to combat that thought if it's not. And I'll try to memorize those verses and really keep them in mind through the day. And I think that helped a lot.
Yeah. That's so good. I think. I just agree. Like, I just agree so strongly because it's so, I feel like people who maybe don't struggle with it as intensely are like, well, just like pray. And I mean, yes, but I think just learning to be able to hang on to those words. I also have a couple verses I kind of wanted to share. Yeah. Well, Jordan stole my thunder, and I have 2 Corinthians 12 and
apologies.
I know, and Philippians 4, but I won't use those. This is Habakkuk 3:17 through 19. I keep mine written in this thing, and I carry this notebook with me everywhere, so I can just pull it
That's
out.
good. Yeah.
Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like deer's. He makes me tread on high places. I think for me, this is a newer one for me because I kind of stick to the classics. But I found it recently when I was talking to a mentor. She recommended it to me. And I really like it because in this verse, everything that could possibly go wrong in like ancient society goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the end of where you rejoice because your strength isn't in you, it's in God. Really, like, I'm like, okay. It kind of also ties in with the like his power is made perfect in my weakness. And so it doesn't always like I can't always embrace it in the moment, but then I can always be like, okay, like his heart is to put me in like to help me tread on high places. His heart is to be my strength. Like he is my salvation. Like all of those things are true.
Yeah, I think. Do you guys know the song like "One Thing Remains"?
Oh yeah, one thing.
Yeah,
remains.
So good.
Like that verse makes me think of that. It's like all these things could go wrong, but like that one thing's gonna remain no matter what. And I think that's like a small bit of sanity we're able to hold on.
Yeah.
To.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I guess before we close up, I was wondering if you guys have any words of encouragement for people who might be dealing with anxiety or depression, who are specifically speaking to the Christians who are dealing with that, because I think we all know that is a funny little spot to be in. Words of encouragement, and then one or two practical tips that maybe, even if we've already said it, like just clarifying. Yeah. Jen, if you are ready.
I think word of encouragement, it'll take some time, and take your time with it. And just really ground yourself in God's word. I think my journey through mental health and struggling, even through physical health, it's taken a long time. I think it's been, I want to say 6-7 years.
Oh, sister.
But I only recently really had the epiphany of oh, God has got me. I think it took so much time, and it will take time. And don't get frustrated by failure, because God will forgive you. God forgives you. God still loves you no matter what happens. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think you're not crazy. I think that's kind of a thought that could come up. It's like, oh, I'm Christian, but I'm anxious, or I'm Christian, I'm still struggling with this. Like, it's okay. Like, I think the thought is to be like, I'm crazy, I'm doing something wrong, there's something wrong with me. Like, very similar to what Jen's saying, but God sees that. I think that's something that has spoke to me a lot. And it's like, man, God hears every little prayer, no matter how small you may see it, or God sees every struggle you're going through, no matter if it's the nth time you're thinking about or going through it. Like your identity isn't in your anxiety, and the identity is the one that Christ gives us, beloved son whom he's well pleased, precious in his eyes. So yeah.
Can I also say, talk to people?
Yes.
Talk to people.
Banger.
It's not good to go through it alone. You really trusted people in your lives, mentors who can speak the truth of Christ to you. Very important, and will help you a lot.
Practical tip from you, Jordan.
Replace your thoughts.
Oh, what do you mean?
So this is a tip I got somewhat recently, actually. But for me, it's man, I can't trust my own thoughts anymore. And that's kind of a hard reality to accept. But it's man, replace it with what we were saying earlier, verses. Replace it with God's word, replace it with something that's true. You know, like think about other people. Like I think a lot of anxiety could be very focused on someone's like self, and then so when you pour out into other people or think about other people, it kind of shifts that focus. And read other people's thoughts. AKA read books.
Yes.
Like replacing what your thoughts would be over or with someone else's who's like who knows more about the subject and things like that. Like that helps a lot.
Snap. I guess I'll give a word of encouragement, a practical tip. I think know that even though it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again, because for me that's like how it felt, is that like, oh, I'm like doing good and like I'm reading my Bible, and then I would feel really anxious or have like a depressive episode, and then I'd be like, why is this happening again? Like I already prayed about this. Something that my therapist told me recently is, okay, like let's say you're in a room and this spiral is happening there. There's a chair here, there's a TV stand here, maybe there's like a bookshelf here. The spiral is here. It's not just staying there, it's going up. So then every time you are spiraling, like yes, it is still spiraling, and yes, it is frustrating. But if you look, maybe this day you see like the chair, but then you do a little more spiral and like, oh, there's like a TV stand over here. Like similar structure, but you're seeing different things every time. And improvement doesn't have to look like being 100% better. It means like maybe today you were able to read that verse that you've been wanting to. Maybe today you were able to reach out to a friend and be open. And so I think like don't get discouraged when it feels like you're stuck in a spiral, because it's always upward. And then a practical tip, I think for me, changing the environment is good. So I think like because usually when I am freaking out, I'll just be in my room or I'll be somewhere where I'm kind of alone. One, if you can't be with people, go outside, touch some grass, or like, like it's actually so helpful. Like I was in my house, I was like, everything's awful. And then I stepped outside and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's not great, but it ain't that bad. It can't be that bad. It's the vitamin D. Yeah. Change your environment, do something slightly different to kind of like switch your mind up. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thanks for coming. Thanks for chatting.
My pleasure.
Yeah. No!
The Chick-fil-A
Sorry,
funny. Min also, you can't see Min, but he's back here doing all the hard work.
Yeah.
He also worked at Chick-fil-A. Woo!
That's the Chick-fil-A.
It's not too late.
No,
You
thanks.
can
I'm
come?
fine with my job.
Summer
I
job?
like my job. No thanks.
We can all say my pleasure together.
No, thank you. I'm good.
My pleasure. Well, thank you guys for tuning into this episode. And that's it. Thanks. Woo, we did it. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you got something out of it. Any resources that me or the guests talked about and verses will be in the description. Have a good one. See you later.